You're good.
Okay, good evening and welcome. This is the October 15th, 2024 Board of Directors meeting for Clover Garden School. The meeting is called to order at 6:37 p.m. Ms. Verhaken, role and mission of the board.
Role of the board, we are entrusted to care for the current school and stay focused on the vision for the future school. No trust, no unity, no progress. The mission of Clover Garden School will foster community, generate enthusiasm, challenge students academically, and produce successful citizens.
Thank you. Has everyone had a chance to review tonight's agenda? Do I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda? Ms. Faw. Oh, okay.
Under new business, it's a small correction. I did follow it a little bit ago, but under new business, the 25-26 academic calendar, I have Ms. Judith presenting. It's inspiration.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Thank you for that correction.
Yes,
Because you don't want me to present that.
correction. Sorry about that.
No worries. Thank you very much. Okay. Do I have a motion to approve this evening's agenda with that change? Ms. Foster, second. Mr. Young, all in favor? Thank you. Next is minutes from the September 10th, 2024 meeting. Has everyone reviewed those minutes? Any changes or updates?
They're about.
In the drive, it was the August minutes, not
Yeah,
the
it's late in
September.
September, but they're actually.
Okay. So we will vote on those minutes in November. Okay. Do we have any public comment, Ms. Verhaken?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Finances, that moves us to finances. Ms. Simmons, July 2024 and the August 2024 budgets. Ms. Lane reviewed those. She had no concerns. Did everybody have a chance to review those? Any questions? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the July 2024 and August 2024 budgets? Mr. Russell, second. Mr. Young, all in favor? Thank you. Old business, safety plan, Ms. Verhaken.
Are we skipping?
I'm sorry. It's
I mean, I'm
it's
fine with it.
academics. It's the principal's update. I was skipping. I guess that's why I gave you the look earlier. I apologize. Sorry.
So we want to start off by saying thank you guys again for the wonderful treats for our KA and 912 campus. The staff were super excited and enjoyed it and really felt pampered. So we appreciate that. We also wanted to say a special thank you to Ms. Red and her team of book fair volunteers and helpers. That was a huge success. And so we're super appreciative of that. When we talk about academics, as you guys know, October starts testing season. So we have a lot of things going on the next few weeks at both campuses. Currently we have check-ins going on. We did have a round before the break at the high school. And then this week we have one going on at the K-8, plus we have the pre-ACT for our 10th graders this week. And then next week is the PSAT 8-9 and NMSQT for our 11th graders. So October's slam packed with lots of opportunities for our kids to get some assessments in. Our curriculum instruction components, I met with the 8th graders in their career development class to kind of start preparing them for the next steps of high school. We talked about, expectations, how every course counts. And it was really neat to see the excitement that the 8th graders have looking ahead at the high school years, and getting to meet me as their principal and ask me questions about, if I want to be an engineer, what do I need to do in high school? And so we got to start talking about certain pathways of high school that they could take and opportunities in dual enrollment and those types of things. Currently, I'm working with the seniors as countdown to college is on. The pre-application week is actually next week, where there are 58 community colleges. They all have free application week next week. There are a lot of the colleges in the North Carolina system that are offering free applications. So that could save anybody from $25 to $75. I've seen some of them expensive as $85.
Yeah.
So next week, if they're on the list, the kids can apply for there. So I've been meeting with seniors, trying to get them all ready for that with CFNC account and Common App. And we are just trudging deep into what do we want to do after high school. And there have been some really great conversations with the students, and I thoroughly enjoyed taking that on as part of what I'm doing to help support them as they prepare for the next steps.
How large is the senior class this year?
Yeah.
42?
Additionally, by way of professional development, the K-12 staff, were able to participate in a professional development on the 25th, which was our last early release day. And in that development, they learned about cultural responsiveness as well as trauma and how it impacts learning and self-care. The staff, they kind of appreciate some of the practical tips that they were given in terms of de-escalation as well as the self-care. And one of those things, that we have a few staff members over here, they were saying they were going to work on saying no with care. So that was one thing. In addition to that, we also had our EC team over here on this campus to lead a mini session of professional development as it pertains to implementing accommodations for students with IEPs. So they were able to do a few little exercises as to what it could look like when you're implementing accommodations so those students can access the curriculum that start.
We had our first AIG night back in September, and we had a pretty good turnout. It was MTSS and AIG both combined, so that we were able to explain to the parents how that program was up and running and show them a little bit, make sure that parents had their differentiated education plan, and we're able to sign that, give them a little insight of what we were doing and their MTSS paperwork. So we are beginning the MTSS program and having it up and running, coming the 22nd of this month at the high school as well. So that will be up and going. Our EL services, English as a second language, will be integrated with the MTSS program. So we also have enough students where we're having to integrate that as well, because we're serving 12 here with our program. And then our AIG services are up and running, and so that's a new, well-deserved and well-rounded. Our parents are loving that program right now. So we've heard a lot of positive feedback about that. So we're doing push out and pull in. No, push in and pull out. I got that backwards. So with that.
So looking at our health and safety, we are going to be having our lockdown training with our staff coming up this month. We're gonna do 2 sessions, one at the K-8 and one at the 9-12, just to prepare in the event that we had to go into a lockdown. Each month we are staying up on our fire drill, and they are getting better with our evacuation times. So that's always exciting. Those first ones are kind of scary because you never know how the kids are gonna respond, but they're right on point and we're staying within our limits. And then at our character trait of the month is integrity, and we do that for the month of October and November. So our teachers are utilizing that during their SEL time. And the high school students got to participate in their first social learning experience. And again, this year we started off with them being able to choose games to go and be able to participate with each other, and no cell phones, and they absolutely enjoyed it 100%. And it went really well. The teachers had a good time. They got to learn, no students they didn't get to know before. Kids were like, are you in our school? So it was really neat to have the opportunity for them to intermingle amongst grade levels.
And over on this side in the K-8 world, we did have some students in kindergarten through 5th grade that were recognized by their teachers. They were selected for good behavior, and they received, they were awarded the opportunity to shop in the book fair. And so that was pretty cool for those little people. And the book fair, which was pretty successful, earned over $1,400 this session here. And then we also have recently had our middle school students to undergo the electoral process. So they campaigned, they recorded their speeches, and then of course voted. So our elected candidates are, we have president was Levi White, Levi Wells. The vice president is Paula Banda, our secretary is Jody Trapani. The treasurer is Leah Lewis, and we have an activities coordinator, and that is Ty Cobb. So their first meeting is this Thursday. They're super excited. They've already have a few things that they're wanting to do, and they'll actually be teaming up with our ALA
students as well to demonstrate some leadership and, initiatives here.
Very good.
We have our monthly calendar coming on, and there's several things coming on with the early release day. We have Unity Day, and you put out for jeans and wear orange. So the staff is super excited about that for our National Bully Prevention. And there's the Campus Cleanup Day coming up Saturday, for the K-8 dance concert, and then we have Red Ribbon Week. We've already mentioned our college. Those are pretty much everything we have going.
I'll just add to that, band has a competition locally this weekend.
Oh,
So on Saturday, let me make sure I told you around 12:20 is their slotted time, but they'll be at Western Alabama's.
oh,
So
okay.
it's local, it's close by, so I want to make sure we told you guys about that tonight in case you wanted to join. But
12:20
about 12:20 is about what time they will perform, so they'll be nearby.
No. That's it. Okay, thank you very much. Great information. Now on to old business. So safety plan, Ms. Braken.
Yep, so that is still in progress. So these lovely ladies have already expressed to you some of the things that we are doing in regards to our safety plan. We have some lockdowns coming up. We've done some scenario-based training with the staff, in regards to all kinds of emergency type situations and what to do in response to that. The sheriff's department is going to be assisting us with the lockdown drills for the staff. So that's been very helpful. We appreciate that collaboration together. And we are actively working on getting all of our paper plan into an electronic platform. And so that's a little bit of a time-consuming, daunting task. But it's going to be a good thing once it's all in there. So that is something that's required for charters this year. So we're working on accessing that program and getting all of our paper product into the online system. So I'm going to leave that on there because that way I just kind of touch base on it every time.
Okay. Post-secondary transition compliance.
Yep, so this has to do with EC stuff. This was something from the 22-23 school year, so it's behind. But I presented several months back in regards to, it was an audit, it was a compliance audit. And so Mr. Squibb, who's our EC consultant, EC coordinator, he's working actively with this. So what that one is in regards to has to do with high school students and their post-transition plans. So when they graduate high school, what are their plans, and making sure all that paperwork is in order. And so we were out of compliance on a couple of the files they pulled. And so then there's like a action plan that they put in place for you. And this Barlow camp has been phenomenal, because we, as you guys may remember, we do have a vacancy, which will be filled on Monday. He starts on Monday. But Miss Barlow camp's been rocking it by herself at the high school for EC World. So she's been doing all the professional development requirements for this indicator, as well as all the other requirements to get those files up to date and in compliance. So he said that there's like 2 prongs to this, and they have completed the first prong, so now they're on the second piece. So I said, Mr. Squibb, when I present this, so can I say you're 50% complete? He said, yeah. So they are making adequate progress into being in compliance with that indicator.
Very good. That is all for old business. We move on to committee updates. Governance.
We have one thing tonight, and the updates for the Title IX federal mandate have been released and finalized, and we just need to implement those as a policy for the board.
So updated Title IX is in the drive. It is 15 pages long. Ms. Merle and I both read through it. It's a federal policy that we just have to implement. Any questions on that?
Are these changes to like proceeding policy, or is this a whole policy
It's changes.
Yeah, just updates.
Okay.
So
that are updated to like the new language or the new requirements? Is that basically?
it's new language, changes. So typically every 4 years, each administration goes through, reviews all of those Title IX, title regulations and policies and updates them with
You got
new guidelines, verbiage that is updated or changed socially in the last 4 years, et cetera. We also dropped in there, that may be in the governance folder, but we can move it out to the board folder, is a fact sheet. Just kind of does the down and dirty of what changes from last time to this time. And it was in effect as of August 1st, 2024. So we do have to vote on that. Yes. So do I have a motion to approve the Title IX policy as updated? Ms. Gould, second. Ms. Russell, all in favor? Anything else, Ms. Merle? That's it?
That's it.
Okay. Finance, Ms. Lane is not here this evening. Mr. Young, there's nothing. Okay.
The school buses, how to go with that? Yeah, good. Yeah. The last thing we talked about really for finance really last time. So. Good. I thought that was a good move. I mean, personally.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was being proactive and fixing immediate need too, so it's good. For that cost especially, so. That's it.
Ms. Foster, academic.
If you look at your agenda, I think that Ms. Barakin and Ms. Whitfield will be addressing that in a few minutes. So we will be meeting as an academic committee again at some point in the near future.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mr. Huffines couldn't be here this evening, but he did send me an update for Long Range Planning Committee. So currently working on getting the permits for the new building or metal building over at the high school. Construction should start soon, or we hope to have it start soon. The high school campus, the 12-month warranty. Mr. Huffines and Taylor will be doing a walkthrough of that campus within the next 2 weeks before a walkthrough with CTW. And our 12-month warranty period for the new building ends on 12/15/2024. Any questions on that? Additions? Okay. And then fundraising committee. No updates this month. Okay. And then just so everyone's aware, we have board training this evening. Our legal representation, Miss Lisa Gordon Stellar is going to be here and doing some board training, informational things to help us along as we continue to enhance Clover Garden School. That moves us to new business. Ms. Barakin, the 25-26 academic calendar.
So in the board folder, you should see kind of a mock-up draft of a potential 25-26 calendar, academic calendar for next school year. Looks very similar to kind of what we've done this school year. Some of the changes that we implemented this year were to remove some of the half days and put them in the middle of the week. And so you'll see some of those are back in here, potentially on Thursdays, and things like that. And the reason for that was we've noticed better attendance from staff. So that's some of the things we've kept in place. Our breaks, our academic breaks that are built in, we've kept in place some of our mental health days. Those have been very beneficial for our staff. And we've tried to also build in, as we do in years past, or we've done in years past, enough days for inclement weather and things like that. So there's a couple of different things that all of it is there, but the calendar's in there. The minimum hours required, to show you how many that we actually have, which gives us like excess hours, which equals to about 5 extra days built into the calendar before we have to start taking half days and things like that. And so every year you have to kind of report in as part of our performance framework, you have to report into DPI, at the state level, into your calendar, how many hours, how you were serving the kids, to make sure that you're meeting the requirements, for the state. So if you just want to take a look at that, if you have any questions, like I said, they're on the bottom. I'm looking at this right now and I need the half days slashed on mine, so that I can see those quickly. But the half days are marked down there at the bottom. And again, like I said, try to keep those still midweek, but kind of took some of them away from Fridays, just so the staff would take an early vacation. We needed those already in the school year for some professional development for our staff. So wanted to kind of get this out there, to you, just because people are planning vacations and things like that for next school year, and we're already in October, and they're already kind of chomping at the bit to see, hey, when is our, August break next year, kind of, book our rental properties and stuff.
Any questions on the calendar? Do I have a motion to approve the 25-26 calendar? Ms. Russell, second, Ms. Foster, any?
Just realized that, sorry.
Some of the dates are off?
Yes. At the bottom, like it says August 14th of 2024. Under the half days, and then August 1st of 2024.
We need to take your side.
Yeah, the years are all, for the days, because you've got October 4th, and that's
They
a
fall-
Saturday.
Okay, these August 14th, September, March, and the April 30th are all on Thursdays, so those are correct. So let me look at the October, I see what you're saying, that's
Yeah, the May 23rd would be 26, but it's also a Saturday.
Thank you for that. So it looks like the right-hand side. We're giving them work days on the weekends. They won't be very appreciative if I
We'll,
make them come in.
we'll let you deliver that message. We won't do that one.
Oh, they have work days.
The left-hand side is just the year.
Okay, thank you for catching that.
Okay, so you're gonna update and resubmit? Okay. So we will not be voting on that.
Yeah, I just realized that parent teacher conference day is also. And truthfully, I'm okay, I'll make these corrections. If you guys see anything else, just shoot that to me and I can bring it
Okay.
at our November meeting.
Yep.
Because I really want to talk about graduation with these ladies, just to make sure they're okay with that thing too, so. But this at first glance, yes, thank you very much for catching that. We'll put this, we'll keep this on the agenda for November.
Okay. So our next item is the 23-24 NC school report. Ms. Verraken and Ms. Whitfield.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Whitfield is going to do a fantastic job. I'm excited for her to present to you guys today. But I want to go ahead and just kind of share with you. So we've been talking about the North Carolina School Report Card. So they are still making some adjustments and things like that, and work on their visuals, all of that good stuff. So we did get an email that it could be February or March before the printing version is ready for you. But in the meantime, I put a document in there, that has to do with our school report card. And there's a couple of different, sites that you can kind of go to kind of navigate, to see more information about the school report cards. So if you go into the board folder and you take a look at where I put competitor school comparison to the board, there are two links at the bottom. One is DPI testing dashboard. So what that is it's a very complex looking program, but it is pretty amazing once you get in there and kind of play with it. So that is what they're using, I think, to kind of graph, all the information we need for our actual report card. But it will let you go ahead and get in there and kind of play with comparisons to Clover Garden to other schools as well. So it kind of looks like this. If you're live in the system, the link to get there is at the bottom of this sheet. So this sheet where I put it in there that says competitor schools, that the links at the bottom, the very first one, the DPI one, is what this one looks like. So when you get in there, you'll have this really pretty blue screen. And what you can do is there's two versions. The second link that I have on this sheet, at the bottom, where it says an Excel sheet, this depends on how your mind works. So this one can be a little overwhelming when you're clicking around, but it can be user friendly. But if you're more of an Excel person, you want to take out, you just want to look at certain sections, you can use that other link as well. That's the Excel sheet, that has the same information on it. But this one is pretty neat. So this one that I put on the document that's in your folder is just Clover Garden. So it kind of shows you our achievement score, our growth score, school performance score, and then it kind of shows you from 2018 to 2024, kind of how we've been steady at the B, and then again last year when we dropped to the C. So it lets you kind of play around in there. You can compare up to 5 schools at a time, which is kind of neat. So I was playing around with that, just looking at us in comparison to some other schools, and us being K-12, it's important to kind of look at elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, and also charters. So that is a really cool function, and you really, if you like data and you like numbers and information, you can really get lost in this program because there is a lot to look at. The other document, I just pulled a couple of schools because this is something that we have to do every year for our bond. This is part of a presentation that we have to do. And I thought, okay, well, I'll use something very similar to kind of just pick some schools that are around us to kind of compare us to. So this document is the one that I said competitor schools. So you'll kind of see us at the top. And what I did was I compared us to, local school systems in Alamance County, Caswell County, Guilford County, which is our big ones. And then there's a Rockingham County school on there as well. So we did kind of like a little mixture of elementary, middle, and high, and also some charter schools in there as well. So you can kind of see some fluctuation in there. I put their current achievement score, growth score, and their school performance grade and their school performance score. And then I thought it was helpful to also give you the comparison of how they did last year. So that you could kind of see where they were and how that changed over time as well. So you kind of see some and these are just from this random slew, 10 or so schools that we chose to look at. But you can kind of take this system that I was telling you about earlier and pull up any school in North Carolina that you want to compare us to. So that kind of gives us like a starting point. What's really neat about that system too, when you get in there and you start comparing other schools to us and how we're doing, you can go in there and take where it's at the top right, it says focus on these students, and you can change it to different demographics. And you can pull them up that way as well. So it really is kind of like a plethora of information. And it's a good resource, especially for us as we're doing some planning. And Ms. Whitfield's going to talk about that here in just a little bit, kind of what we're doing with small group instruction and MTSS and what she's working on with PLC meetings with our teachers that are really kind of honing in and focusing in on the areas in which we are not strong. And as we kind of have talked before, bygones, we got to make changes. Last year was a very tough year with a lot of variables, that played against us last year. So, but we have hit the ground running this school year with the teachers starting on day one, and even with our kids, with the expectations of academics being first. So, another document that I put in there that might be helpful information as well. That is scary and sad to look at, but it's a reality of kind of where we are. It is a comparison chart. So that is taking our EOG and EOC scores and comparing how we did last year compared to the year prior. And there is some scariness there. You will see some drops in several different areas. You will see some areas in which we are shining in, when it comes to science and some math and things like that in the high school levels. But that is the raw data, you know, that we are sharing in small groups with our staff and, you know, no excuses. This is where we are, you know, black and white and where we need to go from there. So that kind of takes what you can, when you get in this program, you kind of get in the weeds of it. That's kind of what you're looking for. That's what you're looking to see is how we scored and then was that an increase or a decrease from the year prior. So that is just some information. This has been shared, not the comparison chart. You could do that if you know, got it here and looked it up, but our parents are aware of our school report card grade, as well as kind of what we're doing to try to fix those things. And again, I'm really excited for Ms. Whitfield's part of the presentation because our academic committee kind of got to hear this already. But it is really kind of some eye-opening information for us and then trying to put things in place to improve this school year. So that is kind of it. I do implore you to kind of look at that. Once we get, you know, the official report that I can print as a PDF, I'll give that to you. But for now, this is kind of our next best thing. That's just kind of a screenshot of what you see when you go into the system and you pull up Clever Garden School's performance from last school year. I kind of screenshot it so you can see the whole thing at one time. And you can see, like I said, compare math and reading compared to the year prior. And then when you get in there, of course, you can kind of dive in a little bit deeper and change the different groups of kids you're looking at. So just wanted to make sure I presented that to you today, and as soon as we have more, I'll share that with you as well, but it kind of gets us started.
I have a quick question to start again. Would you mind just clarifying the difference between the achievement and the growth?
Yeah, so what they do is they have a formula that they use and they calculate our school performance grade and our school performance score based on 80% coming from your achievement score and 20% coming from the growth score. So that's why growth is very important and what we are focusing on. But at the end of the day, you do look at the achievement score because that is weighted more heavy than the growth score itself. And so that is one thing. And again, I'm going to shout out Ms. Whitfield because what we're using this year as our core instruction with iReady is going to give us a clearer and a clearer, destination point, because she was very, very good last year at using our iReady to show us exactly about where we were going to fall at the end of the school year. She got us very, very close to where it ended up being. The state itself, I don't want to use the word curve, but there were some things in there that benefited our school as well as others across the state. But that iReady diagnostic that is a nationally normed assessment is huge in helping us predict how our kids are doing and not just waiting at the end of the year, it's doing it along the way when we do our beginning of the year assessment, middle of the year assessment, end of the year assessment. That's a good question. Any other questions for that part? Thank you.
All right, so as I go through, please ask questions. A lot of you heard it already, but I'll do it again. So, I need to go up for a minute. Either way.
You're fine.
Okay. So at the beginning, you have this presentation. It starts with the iReady beginning of year reading. So all of our students took the diagnostic test. The iReady beginning of year test actually tells us where the kids are falling based off of the end of year results. So that's kind of confusing. But if you take a kindergartner and you give them that test at the beginning of the year, it tells us where they're going to fall based off the end of the year curriculum standards. Does that make sense? So if you look at this, there you're going to see where our students fall out. At the very beginning, it gives you the tiers that they fall in. It should say a tier 1 is 37, not 3. It should say 37%. If you look at this, you're looking at our tier 1 students are the core. What are we teaching to everyone? What is our core? So we took instruction on iReady using that particular curriculum program. So we're using those lessons, which are nationally normed, but we took those lessons and we are using the North Carolina standards and combining those together and saying, okay, this is the nationally normed standards. What are North Carolina standards? And putting them together because that curriculum matches. And so we're taking these standards, the national standards, and we're matching them together and taking that pacing guide and putting it together for every single grade.
So now all the grade levels have the same language, and when you start in kindergarten, you're hearing the same type of language, every single grade level all the way up. So that's what we started this year. They've been doing already, but not with fidelity all the way through. So we're making sure it's with fidelity in math and reading all the way up. So that's what we started out this year when they took their iReady grade level test. So if you go through and look, the next slide or paper that you have tells you by grade level what each percentage wise they scored red, green, or yellow. So green means that they were proficient. Yellow means they're about a year behind. And then red means we're way behind. We got some catching up to do. So if you look on here, it shows you that it starts out, K is not gonna have a red because all of them are coming in as emerging kindergarten. So they're not gonna be so behind as they say. However, if you keep going in our data, if you flip the page, when you go back here, eventually you'll see that almost 66% of our kindergartners came in not knowing, and I'll get to that data a little bit later. But if you skip to the next piece, it shows you that proficiency, if the students show no additional growth throughout the year, by the end of this school year, we are only predicted to be at 41% proficient right now. If we do nothing. We're just continuing to teach the way we are every single day. And that's with our program that we're using and we're just doing. So we put a lot of things in place and you'll see that at the end and I'll go over it, but we have strategically put things in place using this data and using other data from last year as well. So we put a lot of things in place. If we use our typical growth, which is what we've seen years previous, then we're expected to be at 53%, which is lower than what we were last year. So that tells you students that are coming in are not as proficient as they were last year. So that's our new growth coming in. Yeah, you're looking at me like, hey, what's happening here? Well, that's our new growth coming in. But it's also the changes in the dynamics, but it's also our standards have changed as well. So we have our science standards that have changed this year. We've had some math standards that have changed a little bit as well. So the state has also, like she said, we don't want to curve. Say our standards have changed at the end when our test scores have curved, but now they have a new norm that they're also looking at. So this has a new norm to grow. So we're looking at that new norm based test as well for our percentage rate. So what does it do to this? Each kid has to go. Yep, the slide is there. So now we have a lot of growth to do. So if we continue to move on, you're going to go by grade level. As you go by grade level, on the next one, it's going to tell you in the very first column, the percent proficient as of right now per grade level, which breaks it down for us even more as to what grade level we really need to hone in on. So if you look right here at grade 3, that tells you that only 37% of our third graders right now are proficient. As we keep looking, I'm going to flip it over because it tells you M class, or it's called Amplify, is what the state uses for us. It's not nationally normed, so it's more subjective than it is objective of a test. So as we flip the page in just a second, you're going to see that our K, first, and second graders are more proficient on that than they are on this. So there's something happening between kindergarten, first, and second grade than when you get to third grade. There is something happening between that second grade and third grade jump. So we've got, and we are looking at what's happening between second and third grade, because there is a major shift between those two grade levels. So that's where we're really focusing on our instruction this year. So when you flip right now, our first point of priority is kindergarten. When we go to kindergarten, we're looking right here at 66%, which I mentioned earlier, that are in the well below or below in our reading categories when we test those students. So they're already coming into us at 66% of our students not proficient. And that means letter sounds, knowing their letters, being able to fluently read those letters across, being able to decode any of the, being able to go at, cat, being able to do any of that. So by the time they leave first grade, those teachers have a huge gap to make them successful for first, by the time they leave kindergarten, to make them successful for first grade, and then building that fluency per second on up to third. So if you go to first grade, which is the next one, you've got it built for 24 and then to 17%, which they've closed that gap quite a bit. So you've got 28 and 32 at or above proficiency there. So you can tell that kindergarten has made a huge stride on into first grade. So they're ready to go. If you flip the next page into second grade, it gets even smaller because now you've got only 36%. I say only, that's a huge gap, that's a huge number, but it's gotten even smaller. So first grade has made a huge jump as well. But if you take that into third grade now, you've got 56% of your kids not proficient. So there's where we start and we go back. We have two different comparisons now to look at. We have iReady and we have our M-Class to look at here. So that's where we were saying something is happening between second and between third. So there's where we go in and we start making.
So question, Ms. Whitfield,
Yeah.
so with this, you're not comparing the same students, correct?
On third grade,
In other words, like, this is what the second grade did this year,
correct,
and this is what the third grade did this year, right?
right,
But so again, you're comparing, just so that everybody realizes, you're comparing two different classes. You're not comparing kid to kid. So that.
You're not
that-
following the same class.
Exactly. And
from last year to this
it-
year,
Yeah.
exactly,
correct.
It's a
That's
law of
correct.
averages based on the class.
right. And I think that's something that, that as a teacher
Consider.
myself, it
Correct.
was always a little disturbing because you're comparing a class to a totally different class,
Mhm.
whereas instead of comparing a child to the same child the next
Correct.
year. So,
Mhm.
and again, that's just something you have to learn to deal with. But,
Yeah.
I think that needs to be clear that, we're not talking about kid to kid, we're talking about one grade to grade.
Correct. These are, then all of this is just grade to grade to grade. And I can break it down class by class for you. We have that broken down class by class. And, as we go, we'll continue to look at math. And then I'll tell you class by class how we're doing in PLCs and things like that. So math is also broken down the same way. I can go through that with you. As well, the highlights of math shows you, if you continue to grow, to flip through it with no additional growth, it's 37% proficient. With typical growth is 66% proficient. So it continues with math to go through basically the same process that I did with reading. The big thing that I wanted to show a little bit of what we're doing tonight, with our groups that we're pulling, we put in an MTSS specialist for K-5. We put in one for, 6 through 12. So they pull groups every single day based off of our criteria that we set. We have groups going in every single classroom as well that's separate from the MTSS interventionist. We also have the AIG groups that are going in every classroom every single day as well. They also pull out for AIG and or push in for AIG every day. So there's differentiation going on there also. I meet with every teacher every single week. They are keeping spreadsheets of their quizzes, their data, all types of data, and we look at trends on how they're going for each student. And then we bring that together and we look at it for each teacher. And we go through as a grade level and we look at it as well. We talk about what can we do next? How can we do it? We break it down, we analyze it for each of those. So we bring that with our check-ins. We do it week by week. We talk about, what is going on in your classroom? If this type of data looks better than your classroom, how can we bring it back together? What can we do different? So the teachers are constantly analyzing their data every single week, which is a little bit different than we did last year as well. So we're just digging deeper and deeper and deeper into the data. Also, we've hired TAs this year to help at every single grade level. So they're pulling small groups as well. We have told you about that. The kids are grouped according to their EOG from last year and or their proficiency on like iReady. Some of these we group them as well so that we can do intervention. They have higher level math courses. Some of ours are at the high school taking this time. Also, we're checking up on them, making sure that they're doing things. So there's quite a few. We're looking for 80% mastery on each thing, or they're reteaching, retest. Let's see, what else? The phonics, we're doing Letterland all the way through 2nd grade, and then we're switching over some in 3rd grade. They're doing foundation, but that's because Letterland does go through 3rd grade, but we felt like they needed a little extra. So they're doing a separate group with foundations, just making sure they have that extra piece of phonics in 3rd grade for that as well. Common assessment.
Don't forget about class sizes for middle school.
Yes, we went down in class sizes for middle school. We tried to make their class sizes smaller. And then we're also doing inclusion in middle school with the AIG and with our special ed teachers. They're going to make sure they're doing inclusion. What else can we think of?
And that just being truth and transparent, thank you, Ms. Whitfield, because, yes, some of our class sizes are large in electives in middle school. Let me make sure I'm clear about that. Over the elective teachers get me. But we felt like math and reading especially were they're the tested subject areas. Of course, math, sciences in 8th grade and 5th, but also, reading and math, trying to fill in those gaps a little bit, has been really beneficial for our kids and grouping for our teachers and things like that. Our teachers, it's been tough. I'm gonna be honest with you. They have been troopers though, because it has been very tough to change something that you've always done. Well, this is what I've always done. This is what I'm comfortable doing. And this is what I'm good at. But our kids are different. Their learning styles are different. So we've got to adapt and change with it. And so now this data kind of backs up some of those things. And so, a lot of times we're asking them to have more meetings, which has been a little bit, Ms. Whitfield has done a fantastic job, because she's gotten a lot of pushback a little bit from that. Because that is something different that we're asking the teachers to participate in this year. But it's a learning opportunity. It's a learning curve for all of us. And at the end of the day, we are a school. We are an educational institution. And that is why, families send their kids here. So we want to make sure that we can compete and be giving, what we're saying in our mission statement about, academic rigor and things like that. This is how, we're going to do that. And so we have put a lot of things in place. We know that miracles can happen, but we are also realistic when she's talking about how much we have to grow in order to be proficient. So, it might be a long race, but you know, we're ready for the marathon and, you know, we're trying to do things and put things in place that we can hold the teachers accountable, hold the kids accountable, but also that there are measurable, things and measurable goals as well. So.
Do they have any questions?
I have a quick one on, I don't think you went through the AIG numbers.
Oh, yeah.
What is the difference between identified and nurtured?
So identified are kids who have already met the criteria for being in the AIG program. Right now, they are not identified in kindergarten through second grade. We are working with the state because the state this year is saying that we need to find a plan for them to be identified in K through 2. So I have working with our AIG team to make sure that we have certain criteria at this school to make sure they do get identified in kindergarten through second. So right now, those students who meet that criteria right now for certain I-ready points, gifted rating scales, things like that, are already being pulled and being nurtured or are
Okay.
receiving those.
So these are probably all little guys.
The K2,
Okay,
they are
got it.
being
Thank you.
nurtured, they are receiving AIG
Okay.
services, they're just not identified. Yeah. Anything else?
I appreciate you showing us this, not only the data points, but also the plan and what you guys are doing and being completely open and transparent about that. I appreciate that.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Barakin and Ms. Whitfield. Good information. Okay, next item is parental leave. Ms. Simmons, you want to walk through that?
I want to go to my house. It's just not finished. We have.
What does that mean? Yeah.
So the opt-in, we got the reimbursement, through the state, for subs who are on that leave. It just wasn't. Opted into it, we didn't go in, we came from it, so.
Does that change anything for our teachers if we opt back out?
No benefits to it whatsoever. It was a school.
It was just a partial reimbursement for the subs that we used while they were out.
So the leave policy for the staff members is the same.
Yes,
We're just not getting reimbursed from the state.
correct.
Okay.
For the options period.
The option to be reimbursed for the subs that,
Right.
that are working for those teachers. Any other questions on that? Do I have a motion to opt out of the parental leave? Ms. Merle, second. Ms. Foster, all in favor? Thank you. Ms. Simmons, food and kitchen inspections?
Yes, so in the football, we had food section for high school and eating.
And you don't need a vote on that, correct? Any questions on those inspections? Okay, our last item for open session. Ms. Lisa?
Bringing out and introducing, you may need to come to those services that I have up here on this, presentation board. So if you have to come sit here, closer so you can see your presentation, that's fine. Or you're good where you're at, here, that's fine as well. But this lovely lady is amazing. I think she talks to Brandy and I weekly, we daily, a lot of times. So she is fantastic. She is, one, part of our legal counsel. So she helps us a lot when it comes to, human resources, discipline, policies, procedures, those type of things. She is phenomenal. And so this was part of something that we had discussed prior. The student had said, hey, let's talk about some training. We're trying to be proactive this year about giving you guys opportunities for professional development, as we do with the teachers and things like that. And so anytime we get any type of development, we're gonna pass it your way, just so that you can participate if you would like, as part of your learning and opportunity. So, I have learned a lot from Lisa. We have, like I said, a lot of conversations, things like that. Michelle does a lot of presentations and meetings and things like that. And so tonight she has graciously come in, to do an in-person little legal, information session for you, as board members and, as board, being part of our board of directors. Roles, responsibilities, what expectations you have, what liabilities, fall on you guys and stuff as well, as board of directors for our school system. So again, she's got a presentation for you. And then, again, you can ask questions, in open session if there's any questions that she feels like maybe get more specific, or we need to move into close for that. We'll save those and we'll, like I said, head into closed session to answer some of those for you. So I'm very excited. Like I said, I've heard her speak and before, and again, her knowledge is always very, very vital, and important. And she has, worked with us for many, many years. And again, we owe a success to her and her guidance, which is very valuable. So, again, I will turn it over to.
Good evening, folks. Sorry, set up. So I did send this PowerPoint to Brandy and Heather, so you can use it, refer to it. There are some, there's like a couple slides that we don't really need to get into, but just sort of like a nice, easy package for information that you can refer to at any point in time. It's got like all the closed session exceptions, all the public records exceptions, open it, all these other things, but
We're gonna switch real quick.
But I haven't met any of you in person, and I'm really glad to be here. It's nice to come in person. And see you all and kind of observe you for a little bit. I always like to be a little early. You all actually raise questions and you're really paying attention. And when I say that, because it's true and because it's actually really important. And a lot of what we're going to talk about is what is the responsibility as a board member, what should you do from sort of the basics to the extras, and what does it mean to be a board member? And it sounds very but it's complicated. I spent 12 years sitting in your shoes. I was on a board, a charter board from 2004 to 2016. Most of that time being vice chair, and so I understand all the work that you do as volunteers. And I don't know that people recognize that charter boards are all volunteers. You spend your time and your energy to be here, and not just here, but all the other things you're reading when you're not here and worrying about. So, hopefully we'll get into the PowerPoint. Oh, really? Okay. We're going to talk about, I'll just tell you a little bit about me. I got into this because I started sitting on a charter school board. I didn't even know what a charter school was. I was just like, oh, sounds interesting. I believe in public education. Let me see what this is about. And I kind of fell in love with the concepts and people, frankly. And most of the schools I work with, pretty much all of them are like you. They're homegrown, organic charters that are here for your community and are about community. And I love working with those people because it's very gratifying to try to help people who want to make it. And so that's off the whole view. And I've been doing this for a very long time. I work with schools all across the state. I do most everything other than complicated exceptional children and litigation. There are other people that do that. I got out of that litigation game a while back. And decided to just focus on counseling my clients. So we do talk. I will say I don't talk with your school any more than another school. We all have ups and downs, things that come up. But you got a good team here, so you should feel good. And I would say that to everybody, so I just want to hit it. So here's what we're gonna talk about. We're gonna talk a little bit about roles and responsibilities. What does it mean to be on a board? What kind of liability might you think about? A little bit about finance, open session, public record. And then sort of the nitty gritty of like employees and parents, confidentiality, what you need to know about as a board member with respect to Parents' Bill of Rights, Title IX, and conflicts of interest. And I know it seems like a lot, but I'm not getting too deep. Having sat in your shoes and doing this a lot, what I find is, what I want to impart upon you is when things come up, and you're like, you might have heard about this. You might not know the answer, but you know, realize there might be an answer and might be something you need to think about. So I don't expect anyone to memorize it. So we're gonna go through a lot of topics, but the goal is just to familiarize you with things that might come up or maybe have come up. So as board members, this is your job. You are fiduciaries and you have fiduciary duty to the organization. And the flip side of conflict of interest is fiduciary duty. So we're going to begin and end in a full circle. There are three primary duties that you have. You have the duty of care, the duty of loyalty, and the duty of obedience. And it sounds kind of funny. They're obviously fairly arcane legal principles. These actually apply whether you're a nonprofit corporation or a for-profit corporation. These are your duties. And the first one is basically kind of the easiest duty. You're going to handle the business of the organization with the care of an ordinary and prudent person. Not sure who the ordinary and prudent person is, but that's the standard we use. The second and third ones are the ones that are most often where we have questions. And the duty of loyalty is to act in the best interest of the organization and means forfeiting opportunities and making decisions that are about the organization, not about you personally. Now, with a nonprofit, the odds are you're not making money off the organization. Hopefully you're not, but that's not where it arises. A lot of times with board members is certainly it arises with conflicts of interest, but it more typically arises with whether you're a parent of the school or you have a relative that goes to the school or you happen to know somebody that works at the school. And so I deal many times with all parent boards, and it's hard to be a parent of a school, of a parent board member, because you have to have your board member hat and you have to have your parent hat. And they have to be different sometimes. And sometimes they're in conflict. But that's what the duty of loyalty means. And then the last one is the duty of obedience, and it really means that you're going to comply with your policies, with your bylaws, and with your organizational documents, and with the law, obviously. And so it's about making sure that your decisions, just like there were some really good questions tonight about what do things mean when it talks about growth versus other terms. Those are good questions because that goes to you thinking about what your job is. And so those are the three duties. And that's really what drives your obligations and what you do on a regular basis. And you don't really think about them, they're just automatic, but it's good to understand. The other thing, and again, this ties into some later discussion about parents and employees, is you are a governing board. There's often a lot of confusion in the community about who does what. But you govern, you govern and you are not involved in the day-to-day. You've got a great staff that does the day-to-day. You've got a great leader and administration that deals with the day-to-day. You deal with the overall picture of the school. You don't execute. That's what your people are for. And because you are relying on your people, that means you must trust that they're going to do what you say. And I have been in situations where there is a trust problem. And when there is a trust problem, it's something that really has to get addressed very quickly. Because you see the school, even if you're a parent of the school, and that doesn't mean you see the school, you don't see everything. You see the school primarily through the lens of your director and your administration. So if there's a breakdown in trust, that really can be challenging. The director should be providing you regular communication, which is what you're here about tonight, right? And in between meetings, one of the things that I always say, and we will talk about communication, is if there are things that come up that you are not gonna have time for a board meeting, but might end up, you know, chatted about in the papers, or there might be some fuss going on at school, that's when your director should be at least giving the board chair a heads up. Because the last thing you as a board member want is to hear about something in the paper before you hear about it from the director. Now, sometimes that happens. Sometimes you get blindsided because you don't have a heads up. But typically, that's part of that relationship. And generally, the board is seeking information through channels like committees, your administration board meetings, not on your own. And so what does all this mean in practicality? I try to put it into 3 buckets. The one is the academic bucket. We talked tonight about some of the struggles that are having, which are normal and very important conversations for you to know about. Where are your kids? What are we doing to get your kids where you need to go? That's exactly what you want to see in your director and in those board reports. You want to make sure that your program is successful academically. You also want to make sure that your program is adhering to your charter. So if Heather came to you and said, hey, we decided we want to be a Montessori school, you'd be like, hold on a second, lady. We are not gonna be in line with our charter. And then lastly, financially viable with good confidence staff. And that's where your finance reports come in, and your voting and information that you receive about your personnel. And so if you think of, those are the 3 main things. Now, obviously, there are other things that come up over time, but those are the main ones that as a board, you should be regularly discussing. And what I saw tonight is you're doing exactly what you need to be doing and asking really good questions. I put this slide up here because I've had a lot of questions about what the board is entitled to know, what they're not entitled to know. I've had situations, unfortunately, I've worked with a number of schools that have had to shut their doors with financial impropriety. And so I created this slide because I wanted to share with you what is really important. I'm not, and I don't think there's a problem with it, as a board member, what you need to know about what your obligation and what information you can ask for and demand at times. So anything to do with finances, you have a right to know where every dollar is spent. And you should know where your money's going. You need to know the processes. How do people get hired at Clover Garden? How do we do enrollment? How do we do our lottery? You have a right to know, because at the end of the day, those are things that you're on the hook for, okay? And then, so we will have a slide after this about financial best practices, but I cannot tell you how many times I talk with boards who don't know about the contracts that they have voted. And I don't expect you to memorize it, commit it to memory. I don't expect each and every one of you to read it page for page for page. You have committees that do some of that heavy lifting. But by golly, you should know that you entered into a contract for something and why you're voting for that contract. And believe it or not, it is not uncommon for me to go, hey, do you remember voting on that contract? No idea. No idea whatsoever. So we'll talk about it in the finance slide, but you should know, and anytime you have a contract that is in any way complicated or over longer than a year or over a certain amount of money, you should have attorney review. And I say that because, again, there are contracts that are just, they are what they are, we can't change. You know, your internet provider, you know, some of the copier services, we can't do anything about it. But what you can know is, what are our triggers? Like what are our obligations to terminate that contract so we don't get stuck in another year? Or I never want you to be in an auto renew contract that some vendors that you're unable to not have require those. But the idea is, know what you're signing, make sure that you have help if you don't understand things. And a lot of times it seems intuitive, but I get a lot of work by people who don't do it on the front end and are like, oh, can we get out of this contract? I'm like, no. But you can't. It's really, you should have read first. Take my word on it. And similarly, specialization. I said, I don't do litigation. I also don't do complicated exceptional children. I also don't do real estate. So another call me about it, I said, hey, Heather, I'm sorry, I can't help you. Let me help you. Let me help find you someone who can. I'm not gonna, and no attorney should say they can do everything. It's the key. That's the rule. It's like a got your specialty, stay here. You should know about your enrollment data. And part of the reason for that is knowing, are you hiring the right number of people? That drives your budget. I'm not concerned here, but again, I want you to know that. And then basically, you have a right to almost any information that informs your policy development. If you're developing a policy on something, you want to know, why are we doing this? What prompted us to do it? A lot of times we're just required to have certain policies. But sometimes, I mean, I have people have policies on policies, and I'm like, you don't need a policy on a policy. That's crazy. And again, if you ever got in a situation where you didn't think you were getting straight answers, whether it's from administration or whether it might be some board member who feels being cagey, that's something you should definitely figure out how to manage. I'm always available to help if that comes up. So sometimes there's thinking situation. Board member liability. This has come up a lot recently. I just had a school that paid a bill after I told them not to pay the bill because we were disputing the bill because they were worried about personal liability. And they did not call me and ask me a question before they paid this bill. And it was a 6-figure bill. So you don't really have to worry about personal liability when you are on a charter school board. We have something called the North Carolina Nonprofit Act, and it limits liability. It's a corporation. The whole purpose of having a corporation is to limit liability. Okay, and there is immunity for certain types of damages. You have directors and officers insurance to cover you if a situation arose. I have had schools that have gotten sued, and you tender it to your insurance company. That's what your insurance is for. There are exceptions. I'm going to talk just briefly about the exceptions. So basically, if you did something knowing what you're doing was either illegal, and I don't mean like we're contesting you. Like there are legitimate reasons to, as I said, contesting a bill, contesting a contract. I'm not talking about that. But if you, let's just pretend the school was going to buy a piece of property and you decided that you were going to vote against it purely because you want to buy that property for yourself or for a family member, you could have liability if there was any litigation. If you guaranteed a loan, you could have liability because you are now personally guaranteeing a loan. Don't ever guarantee loans, okay? Don't want to do it. And then if there was a situation where you derived an improper personal benefit, none of those are really likely to happen. There's a few other ones, not acting in good faith. Okay, it seems like a lot, but it's really not. It all boils down to, are you doing your job? Are you thinking about the decisions that you're making? Are you making decisions that you believe are in the best interest of the organization? Even if you're wrong, even if at the end of the day, things didn't pan out, that doesn't mean that you acted in bad faith. Okay, so 99.9% of the time, it's going to be fine, and you've got insurance. There can be I can give you an example where I think that somebody could have been liable, and we'll just talk about it right now. I was going to talk to you about it later, but I think it fits right here. So I had a school that called me about a personnel matter. Personnel matter was this. They had an employee at the school that had just started like the last few months of the year, and they then renewed his contract for the following year. And they got an email from a parent, not of their school, saying, did you know that this teacher is under investigation for inappropriate interactions with students? We did not. As it turns out, we verified that was the case, and we also found out that the teacher was being there was the school that made an ethics complaint to the professional ethics. Okay? And so the director at the meeting in closed session said, we are, based on my advice, we're terminating this agreement for next year with this teacher. And here's why. Well, during, one of the board members in that closed session went home and told their child who went to the school that that teacher was being fired. What do you think happened next? The kid emails the teacher and says, I'm really sorry that you're not gonna be here next year. So that is a situation where numerous problems with what that board member. And interestingly enough, when we talked to the board member, I talked with her at the board chair. She did not understand what she done. So that's a huge red flag. But that's a situation where I could see potential for individual liability. But outside of that type of scenario, you've got insurance and you're gonna be. So there's also indemnification, which is what your insurance is doing. If you are a board member and something happens, let's just say you leave Clover Garden Board. In 2 years from now, they get sued for something for what that occurred while you were on the board. There is an indemnification for anyone who served on the board during a period of time. That's what your insurance covers. Okay, so I just want to allay concerns because I've had a lot of boards being worried. I had parents go out there and post on social media that individual board members can be liable and all this stuff. And just want to financial best practices. This is obviously not all of them, but number one, have them. And I know that you do. Financial best practices, every time I review the financial policies, I learn something. And dealing with clients, things come up that you don't anticipate. So they're never static. That doesn't mean you have to change them every year. But for example, I put on here, it should include professional development, parameters, travel, salaries, bonus, and credit credits. Well, I'll tell you why that's there. It's there because I had a school where somebody decided that they were going to travel everywhere first class. I don't know about you, but I only been in first class when I got bumped up through some freaky thing. And this person also decided that rather than going to a conference in North Carolina to get their professional education, through a North Carolina company, they would take that same class in France.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. So yeah, I can think of so many problems. And I shouldn't say that there were multiple breaches in that person is under investigation, but we couldn't have thought this stuff through, or we just believe people are better than that. So we had to update these policies because we didn't know. So all that to say is new things teach us things and we pass those on in our policies. And that's why I recommend that you're specific about the type of travel, about the type of things that go on. The other thing that I learned through the process of a number of schools having to be shut down, in each and every case, all the schools that I've had to shut down, I think we're up to 5. In every situation, they had clean on this. Okay, that blew my mind as a former board member. What I learned is like most things, what you put in is director and it's what you get out. If you don't put certain things in, you're not going to get a robust audit. Not all auditors are equal. You guys have a good. I also learned that there's thresholds for audit findings on undocumented expenses. And it's based on your budget. So I had a school that thankfully didn't shut down, but had, a runaway employee that had 6 figures of undocumented expenses. And what I found out through that process was that if the school had less than something like $50,000 in undocumented expenses, it would never have been an audit fund. Keep in mind, you're required to account for every dollar that you spend in government funds. I was shocked to learn this and felt that it was my obligation to share that with every board that I train. Because yes, having a clean audit is good, but it's not food. And what's more important is those monthly reports and paying attention. I'll never speak in one voice. No one really has any more power than another. The board chair has more responsibility sometimes, some of the other officers, but really you get one vote. That's at the end of the day. And the board chair can't decide to speak for everyone without everyone agreeing to them. So, and which sometimes people forget. So, the other thing that you should know, and I would really, this comes up occasionally, is if you're voting on something, something comes up for discussion, and you realize you might have information that other people don't have, you do have a duty to share it. Because when people are making decisions, every member of the board should have this same information. You can't operate, because then you're not being able to vote with all the information. And I mean relevant information, not, I knew so-and-so's grandma and my father, no, relevant information. But it's important to share. So, any questions before we move on to really exciting open meetings? So, open meetings, we're in open forum. The main thing to realize is that anytime a majority of board members are engaging in a simultaneous discussion about business, okay, whether it's a hearing, whether it's discussing school business, that's a meeting, okay? And meetings can be by email if you mess up, okay? That's one of the biggest things is do not engage in an email discussion with a majority of members. You can engage in a couple, or however many you are, less than a majority. There are reasons not to do that, which I'll explain in a minute. But email's dangerous, text messages. So I had a board tell me once, same board that did not read the lease that they signed, tell me, oh, yeah, we've got a board text string. Oh, no. Nope. Now, it's one thing, if you need to schedule an emergency or special meeting, communicating, hey, we need to do a special meeting for a personnel matter or whatever. Can everyone give when you're available this week, right? That's not substance. You could do a doodle too, something like that. But if you're engaging anything substantive, if it's a majority of members, even if it's over a period of days, if it's a text messages or an email, and then it's required to comply with those meetings. And the same holds true for committees. So if you have a committee, you want to have a meeting, you've got to notice that meeting and follow the same rules. Committee meetings are no different. Other things, board retreats or meetings. If you're interviewing, if you were interviewing for, if you're interviewing Heather, but she was getting a job here, it would have been a meeting, would have been closed session, but it still would have been a meeting. And again, that email discussion, text messages, even over days or weeks, can be a meeting. I will say this, so if somebody sends, let's just say the board chair sent an email to the whole board and said, at our next meeting, we are going to discuss a very sensitive personnel matter. I just want you to realize that we're going to have an extra long closed session. Okay. Don't. Whatever you know. There is nothing wrong with that email from the board chair. Okay. It's the response. And for example, there are occasions, something really important, that I email the board, and whenever I email the board, at the very end of my email, say, please do not reply to this email. If I have a question, pick up with something. One, because your communication to me is not protected, only mine to you. And two, I don't want to start an open meeting. I don't want to get you guys in trouble. So just be careful with that. I will tell you, I've had situations where it comes up mostly in public records, and otherwise it doesn't. decisions have to be made in open session. There's only a few like real estate that can be made in closed session. And public comment is only required, it's not even sure exactly the requirement. I believe it's required, it's not clear that it's required. In any event, it's the best practices, only at regular meetings, or if you have a special meeting just for public comment. And I've done that. You can have public comment anytime you want. So you can do it at the beginning, you can do it at the end, you can do it at the end. Provided your policy is not flexible. I advocate for flexible policy because sometimes you might have a lot of public comment because you're going to talk about something and, or make a decision. And sometimes it's better to have that public comment. This is where I said, there's a slide about the type of meetings. This is just a resource software. Three kinds: emergency, special, and regular. They have different types of requirements. Just so you know, which I'm sure you already do, special emergency meetings, you post the notice, you have to post the reason, you can only talk about what you noticed it for. So if you're gonna have a special meeting to discuss the personnel matter, you cannot also discuss a real estate piece. Okay. Whatever the reason is the reason you have to. Is the reason. Minutes. You say there's no minutes every meeting. That seems obvious. But I say that because it doesn't happen. Only voting members can vote. Again, it seems obvious. But I've had other things happen. Minutes in closed session, not time. Minutes in closed session are just general. So if we go into closed session or discuss a personnel matter, we say, enter closed session at 6:03, discussed personnel matter. No votes were taken. Vote to go into open session at 7:02. All in two. That's it. That's really it. It's very short. Now, it might be something more complicated if you have a real estate matter and you're talking about things, but in general, just a general, what are we talking about? Committees work the same way. You can have standing committees, you can have ad hoc committees. I'm a big fan of only having the committees that you need. Don't want to have a bunch of committees just for the sake of it. You guys are all volunteers. How many committees do you want to serve? I can tell you, I want to serve on one, I served on two. Don't want anyone. And just follow the same idea. Vote, report in, give your minutes, and all. Any questions before you run? Okay. So, closed session, limited. If it's not on this slide, you can't discuss it in closed session. So, the common ones, personnel matters, student matters, real estate, consultation with legal counsel. But legal counsel has to actually be there, not physically, you can be on the phone or Zoom, but I can't just say to Heather, tell the board that X, Y, and Z and have that count as a closed session reason. Now, it might be that we talk about a personnel matter, you have a closed session for a personnel matter, and she said, I talked to Lisa, she said X, Y, and Z. But we didn't go into the closed session for an attorney-client communication. The other thing that's absent on this slide is board member issues. So one of the things that people ask me, a lot of times people are like, we want our bylaws to have 4 causes for removal of a board member. I say, why do you do that? It sounds like a good idea. Well, it does sound like a good idea if you weren't required to do everything in public. So if there was an issue and you want to remove a board member, the entire thing is right out of the books. So my general advice is don't have a reason so you don't have to drag the whole community into a dispute. It is better to just say, we're voting this person off and you have the votes rather than airing your dirty laundry and making a scene. Because discussion of board members is not a closed session. The personnel exception, there are 3 types. The hearing or investigation of a complaint, considering whether you're going to hire someone, and then group compensation in terms of a contract. If it's just general personnel matters, open session. Hiring practice, open session. Salaries, open session. Hiring the people, actually voting to hire, open session. And when I say salaries, I mean all the salaries in school are public records. And if you're talking about how we're gonna pay our teachers, what kind of salary structure we're gonna have, we're gonna give more bonuses, that would all be in open session. Now, there are times where you might in closed session say, like when I was on the board, we would go into closed session, obviously talk about candidates before we offer them jobs. And there might be a situation where like, we would like to offer this person a relocation bonus, something like that. That would be a closed session discussion. It's still gonna be public record, that information, if someone ever asked for it, but not the closed session, it'll be in their contract and that information. Will be. So there are things you could talk about with compensation, but it's very specific. And then public record. So pretty much any is a public record at a public terms. There are exceptions we'll talk about, but a public record just means a document that's at school. It can be a product document, it can be a physical document, it could be a videotape, an audio tape, all of that is considered a record. Even the metadata in the email is a record. And computer files are clearly records. You have to preserve, permit inspection, and provide copies of documents that are requested. Anybody who makes a public records request can make it. They don't have to tell you why. They don't even have to tell you who they are. But you just have to be able to get it. It is, it's kind of a sunshine law. Every state has a public record law. And most states have the same type of rules that anybody can ask for it. There's a group called Open the Books and See, often ask for all of your vendor lists or your employee pay or all this stuff. It's public money. People have a right to see how things get spent. They have a right to see your contracts. Now, there might be things that we redact if they're confidential, but pretty much everything is a public record. In fact, recently, did you guys get that? You did. You had that fun time. There's a parent, not a district, at another school, and actually they weren't even a parent at that school anymore. They got mad at that school, and they got mad at the attorney at that school, who was representing that school, who was not me. And I don't think they had any reason to be mad that they were mad. Well, that person went and did a public record request to dozens of charter schools. And what they wanted was all of the log of all of your public record requests and all of your attorney invoices going back to 2018 for this particular attorney. And so we responded and said, thanks for reaching out. Great, so happy. We don't have a public records law, and we did work with this attorney. Okay, and then the person came back many times. Less for you than others. She's really tenacious. So she's like, well, what about I like any emails of people making public record requests. Like, we don't track this. So sorry. Well, then I would like to know, the amount of money you spent on an attorney in the past since 2018. It is all public records. We tried all different ways, but you have to, at the end of the day, provide that information. I did have some schools that have used this attorney, and so how do you produce that bill? Well, you have to redact it. And this is where we got in a little bit of a tiff with this particular requester, because she said, well, why can't you just produce them? They're public record. And I said, not that simple. Attorney bills sometimes have confidential information. I keep my bills very vague, precisely for this reason, so you all don't have to redact and produce. So it'll say, whenever I have Heather and I have a conversation about a personnel matter, it doesn't have the person's name. It says, conference with Paige Barakian regarding personnel matter. This way, you could produce it without having to sit there with a pen. But there are reasons, there are situations where you might need to put the person's name. And there might be situations where I put somebody's name that's necessary, so you understand what we're doing. But we have to redact. So she didn't really like that, we went back and forth. But she had no connection to your school, or any of my schools for the most part, and made this request, totally rude. These are the exceptions, and they're not meant attorney-client communication. But it's only my communication to you unless you are in litigation. Attorney bills, as I said, the bill you have to produce, you just take out the confidential information. Closed session minutes, however, remember I was saying, just a general account, they are not forever confidential depending on what the topic of closed session. So if it's real estate, once that matter's done, it's open, you can produce that if someone asks you. Obviously, social security numbers, volunteer records, personnel records, student records, things like that. But if it's not on this list, it's public records. And the other thing is, it's not where the public record sits, it's what it says. So, okay, Brandy is emailing from her personal email and conducting school business. Those are public records. But if Brandy is using her school email to make a demo appointment, not school business. So it's where it's not where it is, it's what it is. And I said that personnel matters are exempt from public records, except there's an exception to the exception. And this is a double exception, so it's one of my favorites, which is under public records law. I said a minute ago that this person had asked for a public records request law. And I said, public records. Well, you are not required to make it. Okay? If you don't have the document requested, you don't have to go make it. Let's just say someone says, I want, the email exchange between two board members on this date. And there's no email exchange. We don't have anything to, well, I know you had a meeting about it, but we didn't send an email. You don't have to create it. So if you don't have the document, you don't have to create it. This is the exception. Someone asks you for this information, you have to create the document because you can't turn over the actual personnel file. You have to turn over the information. And this is an exception to the not giving out personnel information. All of the information on this slide is public information. If you ever feel like you need to get to go to sleep at night, you're looking for something to do, go to the university system and you can just sit there and look at everyone's salary. You can just go through everybody. You can go through a hospital, you can do whatever you want. It's because they're all public records. Same thing with your employees. And there is that organization that occasionally hits you up for this stuff. The other interesting thing that you could do with this is, you fire an employee, you can't say anything. You're zip, nothing. We got nothing to say. You get a clever reporter who says, we would like this information on that employee. Your story can get out there and you haven't done anything improper. You've complied with the law. So sometimes we make sure that, my comprehensive termination letters make it clear so that if you ever run into a situation like that and somebody actually made a public records request, your story gets out. Just like the attorney bills I mentioned, if there is both confidential and public information, you just redact. And that's kind of a pain and it could cost money. You cannot charge for public records requests except in extraordinary situations. A situation I had that was kind of extraordinary was somebody wanted like 4 years of email exchanges between board members. And we said, you're welcome to have that, but we're gonna have to hire someone to go through all that stuff and you're gonna have to pay. Also had somebody wanted 10 years of all of the finance receipts that were not online. And we're like, come on down. We'll open the door and you can go to town. Because we don't have the time to do. I already told you that, and we talked about this. Just remember confidentiality, student personnel, make up board records, and don't discuss it with your kids. That's really and my kids loved her. My girls, they just no, honey, they'll come home from school. I know something happened with this teacher. You're never gonna. My daughter was so funny. One day we were driving through the neighborhood, just like 8 years old, and there was a police car in front of someone's house. I want to be a police officer. I want everyone to. Each to his own. Now she's in college and she wants to be a physics major, so I don't know. They're great up there. This is your role in hiring. Yeah, every year Heather's gonna bring you a slate of people. You're gonna go into closed session, you're gonna go through that slate. And if all of these things are yes, they went through the hiring process, they're qualified, the position's needed, you have money, it's a yes. That's all you have to do. You don't need to get into the weeds, but you should know what your hiring process is because that can allay your concerns that you're doing something right. I know when I was on the charter school board, I really needed to know that. To come to terms with it and say, okay, so I trust you're using this process, okay, we're good to go. It just gives you peace of mind. Now I get to parents and employees. And, you know, I hate talking about the good old days, but like pre-COVID was the good old days. And now we're here. We get a lot more with parents and employees, and it's not just you, it's everybody. I had to submit today to the Office of Civil Rights a list all the parents that have been banned from the school the last 2 school years to make sure that this parent who's making a complaint was not singled out. And I was impressed with the number of people and the reasons for their being used. But that's most of the time, that's not what's. But you as board members will get emails from employees, you'll get emails from parents. I'm sure you're very gracious when you respond to them. But the main takeaway with both of you is you have processes for them to communicate. And to save you, if nothing else, save yourself from the aggravation of having more work as a volunteer. You have a very competent staff that is supposed to handle all of these concerns. People can go through your grievance process. If it's a grievance, it'll get to you in due time. They can make a little comment and you'll listen. You might have committees they can volunteer on and use their powers for good. But try as best you can to funnel people to those places, because otherwise you undermine your administration and you create more work for yourselves and you create confusion. And again, I believe in transparency and I believe in giving people opportunities to speak and be heard. And sometimes that's all people need to feel better. But do it in the right way so that there's not perceptions of favoritism, and there aren't perceptions of we don't get the answer we like from this break and we're going to the board chair because they're going to listen to you. And sometimes you might do something inadvertent. I had a school last year, one of the board members thought that she was called. She knew one of the teachers at the school, had gotten to know her over the years, and there was a lot of challenges with this teacher. She thought that she could sort of mediate the situation. It sort of blew up in her face. She realized it, she called me, because Lisa, I'm so sorry. I should have taken that advice you've given. How do I get it? To make this shit. So just follow the processes. And what to do with public comment? I added this, I don't think you have problems with it, but it is becoming more and more challenging in boards. I can say as a former board member, I often found public comment, especially when people are emotional, to be challenging. And because you're human, right? The people are sitting there talking. And so one of the best things to do is have a script that you read every single time. Make sure, even though you tell people, please don't talk about personnel and individual student members, they're still going to do it. Just don't engage. But just listen. That's the main thing, is listen to what people have to say. And then if there's follow-up that needs to happen, they can go, you can have this break and follow up. They bring agreements, they can bring agreements. But I just recently had a board that thought that they on the spot had to put that item on their agenda. No. Sometimes people will make you aware of things that aren't that you might want to consider. But it's not right now. You put it on for, you decide if you want that on, or if the board is even the proper place, because again, a lot of what people are concerned about is day-to-day stuff. So just remember, Parents' Bill of Rights, not a whole bunch, of stuff going on with that. Heather and I actually have a little bit of a discussion about it this week, because we've got some conflicting direction from the legislature, which is, hey, we need to keep schools safe and require all these things, but hey, we have to tell parents stuff over here and get consent sometimes. And what I can tell you is that Heather's very aware of it, the administration's very aware of it. When things come up, we're dealing with it. I don't really anticipate much ever getting to the board, because under that law, if someone actually brought up some sort of violation, we have 30 days to cure it, and we figure out a way out. And you know, even in the last bullet point, we're really not seeing any of this happening. I mean, most schools were frankly already in compliance. The law does not prevent little kids from discussing or asking questions in class. It doesn't prevent teachers from talking about different types of families in those grades. But we just aren't seeing, it's really a lot of work and not a lot of safe, you know, but it exists. So I wanted to bring that up. Title IX, I wanted to bring this up because people are becoming more and more educated. It's more and more in our the vernacular appearance, and there's a lot of confusion. And there's a lot of confusion for a number of reasons. One, we over the summer there were new regulations that came out, and in some places they were enjoined, so prevented from being enacted. In other places they were enacted. So it's kind of a hot mess on that front. In North Carolina, the change hasn't really, there was a change, and the board actions really don't have a whole lot of impact. Main thing for you to know is that the regulations that went into effect on August 1st are so much better for your administration than what existed before. What existed before was very onerous. It really made your school have to turn into its own little court situation. And that's not what your educators do. And so I mean, I wish there wasn't a court challenge, because I think it's, the process is 1000% better. But even with that, there might be a time where you might be called upon to make a decision. If we got to that point, we have some training about what we need to do. It is not just, it's not something like, just because kids have, you know, are in a relationship or someone says something mean to somebody else and it has a sexual overtone, that doesn't make it Title IX. Most of this stuff is still just one under. It's very specific sort of things that would rise to the level. And in any event, just know we're dealing with it. The other thing to keep in mind is the student discipline. When you have had exclusion hearings, we are seeing more and more involvement from local law clinics. They're trying to give law students more experience, and this is one way they do it. And it doesn't really change the process in any way. It just means that it might be a little more formal, and you have more of a chance for there to be an appeal of the decision, because the family no longer has there's been downside. So, but again, it's not like I'm seeing it very often. It's just, I am seeing it when I am never spoken. And then our last one, conflict of interest, goes all the way back to the beginning, which is your duty of loyalty. So your duty of loyalty to Code of Government, not you. Now, for charter schools, a lot of it doesn't apply, because you can't be in a contract with the school and be on the board for money. So board members cannot receive payment for your services. You cannot run a business that provides services to the school for money. And if you have an actual potential conflict, you have to disclose it to the board. Most of the time, because there are restrictions on the board members when they're having a financial stake in anything that is contracted in the school, most of the conflicts of interest are really, if you're a parent, you know somebody who's getting hired, if you know somebody who are related to somebody who is entering into a contract, and then the process for conflict of interest is you disclose your conflict, you recuse yourself, Everyone else votes on what's the best interest, and you document it in writing. And so I have that schools call me and say, hey, we have this conflict of interest that comes up, what do we do? I walk you through it, exactly what you need to have in your minutes, because the Office of Charter Schools does require your minutes to be very clear about that conflict and how to handle it. But it is not terribly complicated. I am somebody who believes in being more conservative, and so if you have a potential conflict, even if really not much, what's the word, just don't get, just stay out of it. Gives everyone else around you peace of mind, gives you peace of mind. And it's not gonna likely change the outcome anyway. But I think that the other thing I'll say about conflicts of interest is, and rightfully so, there's been a lot of bad press with charter schools and in North Carolina in the past on conflicts of interest. I believe that we have, I've been told something like 5 to 6 federal investigations going on in North Carolina over that. It's not just a matter of compliance with law, it's also a PR issue. And so that's why I say it's better to just remove yourself and inoculate the school and yourself against that than to continue. But I'm not too concerned, but it's just something that. So I realize I talked to you about things I'd like to talk to you about. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. This, again, your board vote, and if things change, we'll do that. But that's it.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Lisa. This was great. Really appreciate it.
Oh.
Oh. Okay, that's our last item in open session. We do have items for closed session this evening. Do I have a motion to go into closed session under General Statute 143-18.11A1? Ms. Merrill, second. Ms. Gould, all in favor?